I realized my marriage was over the moment my own front door refused to recognize my key. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming. No police cars. Just a soft click. And then nothing. I tried again. Then a third time. The lock had been changed. I stood there holding two grocery bags that suddenly felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. Inside one bag was my husband's favorite coffee. Inside the other was a birthday card for my stepdaughter that I'd spend an hour choosing, because she always laughed at terrible jokes. I never got to give it to her. Before I could knock, the porch light came on. The door opened just enough for my husband, Daniel, to step outside. Not to hug me, not to explain. Just enough so I couldn't see inside the house we'd built together. His wedding ring was gone. His voice was strangely rehearsed. I think it's better if you leave. No emotion. No apology. As if he were reading instructions from a manual. For a second, I honestly wondered if he was talking to someone else. Then he looked straight at me. You don't live here anymore. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the alternative was collapsing right there on the porch. I don't understand. He rubbed the back of his neck. My attorney told me not to discuss it. Attorney. That word landed harder than anything else. Not wife. Not marriage. Not us. Attorney. Before I could ask another question, another voice came from inside. A woman's voice. Soft. Comfortable. Like she'd been living there for weeks. Daniel. Is everything okay? I knew that voice. My younger sister. Emily. The same sister I'd helped pay through nursing school. The same sister who stayed in our guest room after her divorce. The same sister who once cried in my arms and promised she'd never forget everything I'd done for her. I didn't knock. I didn't scream. I simply placed the grocery bags on the porch, turned around, and walked away. Halfway down the driveway, my phone buzzed. One message. Unknown number. Don't make this harder than it has to be. No name. No explanation. Just 13 words that erased 16 years of marriage. I thought losing my husband would be the worst part. I was wrong. Because 48 hours later, I would discover they hadn't just taken my marriage. They had taken my business, my savings, my reputation, and almost my father's final gift to me. The strange part, they believed I would never fight back. They underestimated one document, one signature, and one promise my father made 23 years earlier. But I didn't know that yet. At that moment, I honestly believed I had lost everything. Welcome back to Reality Drama Story, where family secrets unfold and quiet decisions change everything. If you are new here, drop a comment and subscribe. Now let's get into it. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 43 years old. Until that Tuesday evening, I thought my life had been carefully built, one honest decision at a time. My father used to say that buildings don't collapse because of one bad brick. They collapse, he'd tell me while handing me another nail at his construction site, because someone ignored the tiny cracks. I was 10 years old when he first let me help him frame a wall. The hammer was almost too heavy for my hands. I bent nearly every nail. He never laughed. He'd simply pull the crooked nail out, hand me another one, and say, "Straight lines aren't born. They're corrected." Those words stayed with me long after he was gone. Dad owned a small residential construction company outside Columbus, Ohio. Nothing flashy, just honest work. He believed a handshake mattered. He believed your word mattered even more. When I graduated college with a business degree, I came home instead of chasing a corporate job. Everyone said I was making a mistake. Dad smiled. He handed me a folder filled with unfinished project bids. I've been waiting for a partner. For the next 15 years, we worked side by side. He handled the crews. I handled the numbers. Every Friday afternoon, we'd eat burgers from the same little diner 3 blocks away and argue about baseball while reviewing payroll. Those afternoons became my definition of success. Not money. Stability. Trust. Then cancer arrived without asking permission. It took less than 14 months. Even in hospice, Dad worried more about whether our employees would get their Christmas bonuses than about himself. 3 days before he died, he squeezed my hand. Don't let people borrow your kindness without paying it back. At the time, I thought he was talking about business. Years later, I realized he meant family. After Dad passed away, I inherited his share of the company. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to build a future. About 6 months later, I met Daniel. He was charming without trying too hard. He worked as a commercial insurance consultant. He listened more than he talked. When I mentioned Dad, he never changed the subject. Instead, he'd ask questions. What was he like? What did he teach you? Those conversations made me believe he understood grief. Or maybe he simply understood me. We married 2 years later. He had a 6-year-old daughter named Lily. Her mother had moved across the country after remarrying. Lily was shy. She refused to call me Mom, which I respected. Instead, she called me Sarah for almost 4 years before one Christmas morning she accidentally said, "Can you help me with this, Mom?" She froze, covered her mouth, started crying. I hugged her. I never corrected her. That single word meant more than any wedding vow ever could. Looking back now, that might have been the happiest day of my life. And maybe that's why I ignored the first crack in the foundation. It wasn't obvious. It never is. Daniel slowly became interested in our company's finances. At first it sounded reasonable. You work too hard. You should let me help. You trust everyone. Little comments. Tiny suggestions. Nothing alarming. Then he started asking questions about account access, vendor contracts, insurance policies, retirement funds. I answered everything. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. At family dinners, my younger sister Emily always admired what we'd built. She'd joke that I was the responsible sibling while she was still trying to figure life out. After her divorce, she moved into our guest room. She stayed for what was supposed to be 3 months. 3 months quietly became 14. She helped with Lily, cooked dinner sometimes, watched movies with Daniel when I worked late finishing bids. I thought they were becoming close as family. I never imagined they were becoming something else. One evening, my accountant, Robert, called. He sounded hesitant. "Sarah, did you authorize $200,000 to be moved into the expansion account?" I was standing in the grocery store comparing cereal prices. No. There was a long silence. "That's strange." He quickly added, "It was electronically approved using your credentials. I assumed it had to be a banking error. Those things happen, right?" I told him I'd check when I got home. I never got the chance, because by the time I reached my house, my key no longer fit the lock, and my life, brick by brick, had already begun to collapse. I spent that first night in a hotel less than 5 miles from my own house. Funny how distance changes nothing. The bed was clean. The room was quiet, but every sound felt borrowed, as if I were sleeping inside someone else's life. Around 2 in the morning, I opened my banking app. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed something I had never paid attention to before. 3 accounts I recognized. One account I didn't. Its balance read $214,860.47. It wasn't in my name. It was listed under our company's operating permissions. I tried opening the details. Access denied. I stared at the screen. I had founded that business with my father. How could I suddenly be denied access? I called Robert the moment his office opened. He answered on the second ring. "Sarah, I was hoping you'd call. You said there was a transfer." "There were 3. I sat down. "3? He cleared his throat. 200,000 on Monday, 48,000 yesterday, and another 65,000 scheduled for Friday." My stomach tightened. "Who approved them?" Another pause. "Your digital signature." My signature was forged. I know. Those 2 words gave me no comfort. Instead, They made everything feel more real. Robert lowered his voice. I didn't want to say this over email. What? Daniel has been meeting with the bank for weeks. For weeks. Not days. Weeks. While we were eating dinner together, watching movies with Lily, planning our anniversary, he had already been building another future, one that didn't include me. I drove to the office. The parking lot looked exactly as it had every morning for the last 12 years. Mike's old pickup sat in its usual spot. Linda's silver SUV was parked beside the warehouse. Nothing had changed. Except everything had. The receptionist looked relieved to see me. Sarah. Before she could say another word, two men in suits stepped into the lobby. I'll need your employee badge. I blinked. My what? Company policy. I own this company. One of them avoided eye contact. We were instructed that your employment has been terminated. Terminated. The word echoed through the lobby. Employees began looking up from their desks. Nobody spoke. I wasn't embarrassed. I was confused. You can't terminate the owner. One of the men handed me a folder. Inside was a board resolution. My name appeared at the top. Below it, a signature that looked almost identical to mine. Almost. Daniel knew exactly how I signed documents. He'd watched me do it for years. One letter was slightly different. The curve in my M. Tiny. Almost invisible. But it wasn't mine. I never signed this. We were told otherwise. They weren't cruel. Just following instructions. Like construction workers reading the wrong blueprint. I handed the folder back. I'll leave. One question stopped everyone. Has anyone actually called me before believing this? Silence. I walked out carrying nothing. Not even the framed photo of Dad that had always sat on my desk. That afternoon my phone rang again. This time the caller ID surprised me. Lily. I answered immediately. Sweetheart. She didn't say hello. They told me you left us. My heart broke. No. They said you chose your business over our family. I closed my eyes. Lily. Listen to me. I asked if I could call you. Her voice cracked. They almost said no. Almost. That single word told me more than anything else. Someone was controlling who she spoke to. I love you. I know. You always will. Always. She whispered something before hanging up. I don't think Dad is telling the truth. The line went dead. I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes. Not crying. Just breathing. Because if I started crying, I wasn't sure I'd stop. 3 days later, I received divorce papers. They arrived by certified mail. 26 pages. Neatly organized. Cold. Efficient. Daniel wasn't asking for a divorce. He was accusing me of financial misconduct. According to his filing, I had secretly transferred company money, neglected my marriage, created a hostile home environment, and voluntarily abandoned the house. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because every accusation described exactly what had been done to me. The filing requested nearly everything. The house. The company. Joint investments. Even reimbursement for emotional distress. Robert called while I was reading it. Don't sign anything. I wasn't planning to. Good. Then he said something that made me stop pacing. I found an old file. What kind of file? One your father insisted we keep off the digital system. My pulse quickened. I'll bring it tomorrow. He refused to explain over the phone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I drove past my house. Old habits. The lights were on. Daniel was grilling in the backyard. Emily laughed at something he said. Lily sat alone on the porch swing. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't even looking at them. She was staring into the yard where we'd planted a maple tree together 7 years earlier. I remembered her tiny hands covering the roots with dirt. She'd asked if trees remembered who planted them. I'd told her yes. I still hope that's true. Because people forget. Trees don't. The next morning, Robert arrived carrying an old cardboard archive box. It looked ordinary. Faded tape, dust along the edges. He placed it on the table between us. Your father made me promise. Promise what? If anything ever looked wrong. He slid a sealed envelope toward me. I was to give this only to you. My name appeared on the front. Dad's handwriting. I hadn't seen it in almost 8 years. For a long moment, I couldn't bring myself to open it. Robert waited quietly. Finally, I unfolded the letter. It wasn't long, just 1 page. Sarah, if you're reading this, something happened that made you question the people around you. Remember this. Trust is never something you give away permanently. It's something people continue earning. There is one document that I never discussed with anyone except attorney Helen Brooks. Not even you. If the company is ever threatened from inside the family, she knows what to do. I hope this letter is never needed, but if it is, don't argue. Don't panic. Just follow the blueprint. Love. Dad. I looked up. Helen Brooks. Robert nodded. Retired now, but still practicing part-time. What document? I don't know. He smiled faintly. Your father trusted very few people. Then he added one sentence that changed everything. I think he expected this someday. For the first time since my world fell apart, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what my father had hidden, and why. If this story is hitting close, drop a comment and stay with me because what happens next is something none of them were ready for. The following morning, I drove 93 miles to a quiet town where my father had handled nearly every legal matter for more than 30 years. Attorney Helen Brooks still worked out of the same red brick office building I remembered visiting as a teenager. The brass nameplate on the door had faded. Everything else looked untouched. Inside, the waiting room smelled like old books and coffee. There were framed newspaper clippings on the wall from construction projects my father had completed decades earlier. For the first time in days, I felt like I had stepped into a place where lies couldn't survive. The receptionist smiled politely. Mrs. Brooks has been expecting you. That sentence stopped me. Expecting me? She nodded. For several years, Helen Brooks looked older than I remembered, but her eyes were just as sharp. She stood to shake my hand. I'm sorry we had to meet under these circumstances, Sarah. You knew I'd come? She motioned for me to sit. I hoped you never would. She opened a locked cabinet beside her desk and removed a thick navy blue binder. My father's initials were embossed on the cover. J.M. She laid it gently on the desk. Your father left detailed instructions. I ran my fingers across the cover without opening it. I don't understand. He believed that buildings fail from hidden pressure. I smiled through the sadness. That sounds exactly like him. He applied the same thinking to people. Helen folded her hands. When your father transferred ownership of Mitchell Residential Construction to you after his diagnosis, he did something unusual. What? He separated control from appearance. I frowned. I don't follow. She opened the binder to the first tab. There are two kinds of ownership. The ownership people think they have. She turned another page. And the ownership they legally possess. My heartbeat slowed. Not because I was calmer, because every word mattered. She slid a document toward me. It was dated April 18, 2018. My father's signature appeared at the bottom. So did mine. I barely remembered signing it. Back then, I had signed dozens of papers while Dad reorganized the business before chemotherapy. This is the family continuity agreement. I've never heard that name. You weren't supposed to. Helen adjusted her glasses. Your father insisted the agreement remain confidential unless 3 specific conditions occurred. What conditions? She pointed to 3 numbered paragraphs. 1. Evidence of internal fraud. 2. Attempted unauthorized transfer of company ownership. 3. Coercion involving immediate family. I looked at her. All 3 happened. She nodded once. Exactly. My hands were shaking now. What does it mean? It means your husband never actually gained legal control of the company. I stared at her. He changed bank access. Temporary authority. He removed me. Operational authority. He fired me. She almost smiled. He fired someone he legally couldn't. I leaned back. So what does this agreement actually do? Helen turned to another section highlighted in yellow. It created what your father called the builder's clause. I had never heard those words before. What's that? If anyone attempts to gain control of the company through deception, forged authorization, or manipulation of a family member. She paused. Every ownership transfer automatically freezes. I blinked. Automatically? No judge required. No hearing. No approval. The clause activates the moment fraud is documented. I felt like someone had finally opened a window after days of suffocating. Daniel thought he had won. He had been standing on a floor that wasn't attached to the building. But there's more, Helen said. Of course there was. Dad never built anything halfway. She pulled another envelope from the binder. This one had my name written across it. Again. His handwriting. Again. I unfolded the letter carefully. Sarah, if someone ever tries to steal what we built, don't waste your energy proving you're a good person. Good people spend too much time defending themselves. Instead, ask for the paperwork. Paper rarely lies. Dad, I smiled despite everything. That sounded exactly like him. Simple, precise, almost stubborn. Helen closed the binder. Now we begin. How? We document. Everything? Everything. For the next 4 hours, we built a timeline. Every transfer, every email, every account change, every text message, every signature, every date. April 7th, April 12th, April 18th, April 24th, May 2nd. By late afternoon, one wall of Helen's conference room was covered with printed documents attached by colored pushpins. Blue for financial records, yellow for property, red for legal actions, green for witnesses. Looking at it felt strangely familiar. It reminded me of watching my father lay out blueprints before building a house. Every piece had a place. Every measurement mattered. Then Helen stopped at one bank statement. Wait. She pointed at a transfer of $65,000. Do you recognize this account? I shook my head. She typed for several minutes before looking up. Interesting. What? The receiving company doesn't exist. What do you mean? It was dissolved 11 months ago. I frowned. So where did the money go? That's exactly the question. Robert, who had joined us halfway through the afternoon, leaned closer. Someone reused the old account number. Helen looked at him. Which means. Robert finished the sentence. Someone expected nobody to check. By the end of the day, we had identified 7 questionable transactions totaling $486,214.83. 7. Not one mistake. Not 2 misunderstandings. 7 deliberate moves. Each one carefully planned. Each one depending on one assumption. That I would never look closely. As I gathered my papers, Helen handed me a small silver key. I looked at it. What's this? Your father asked me to keep it. What does it open? I honestly don't know. She smiled faintly. He only told me one thing. What? Give Sarah the key only after she remembers how strong she already is. I laughed softly. Dad always liked speaking in riddles. No. Helen shook her head. He liked teaching patience. Driving home, I kept the key in my coat pocket. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't decorative. Just an ordinary little key. But somehow, it felt heavier than everything Daniel had taken from me. Because for the first time, I realized something important. He had stolen my house. He had stolen my marriage. He had tried to steal my father's company. But he could never steal the one thing my father had spent a lifetime building inside me. The ability to rebuild. Still, one question refused to leave my mind. If the company had been protected all along, then why had Daniel been so confident? What did he believe he had that I didn't? I would get the answer 3 days later, at a family dinner that he had organized himself. A dinner where everyone thought I would arrive defeated. Instead, I would arrive with the blueprints, and none of them were ready for what those papers were about to expose. 3 days later, I received an invitation that surprised me. It wasn't from my attorney. It wasn't from the court. It came from Daniel. Family dinner, Sunday, 6 p.m. We should end this peacefully. Peacefully. That word almost made me smile. People rarely ask for peace when they believe they're losing. They ask for it when they think they've already won. Helen looked at the invitation and simply said, "Go." Robert agreed. "So does every document we've prepared." I asked if I should bring anything. Helen nodded. "Only the truth." Sunday evening arrived. I parked across the street from the house that no longer felt like mine. The maple tree lily, and I had planted, swayed gently in the summer breeze. It had grown almost 12 feet tall. Some things keep growing, even when everything around them seems to stop. I walked to the front door carrying a simple leather folder. No dramatic entrance. No speech prepared. Just paper. Paper had always been stronger than promises. Daniel opened the door. For a split second, surprise crossed his face. Then confidence returned. "I'm glad you came." I said I would. Emily stood behind him in the dining room. She avoided my eyes. The table was already set. Daniel's parents, Emily, my Aunt Carol, Lily. 7 people. 1 empty chair. Mine. I counted something else. During dinner, Daniel said my name 11 times, each time a little differently. Sarah misunderstood. Sarah has been under pressure. Sarah made financial mistakes. By the 11th time, I realized something. He never once looked directly at me while saying my name. He was performing for everyone else. I stayed silent, exactly as Helen had advised. People reveal more when they think silence means surrender. Dessert arrived. Apple pie. Ironically, my father's favorite. Daniel cleared his throat. "I think we all agree this divorce doesn't have to become ugly." Nobody answered. He continued. "Sarah has agreed to move forward." I finally spoke. "No." Every head turned toward me. One word had changed the entire room. Daniel forced a smile. "I'm sorry. I haven't agreed to anything." He laughed nervously. "We've all been through enough." "I agree. So let's sign the settlement." I placed my fork on the plate. Very gently. "No." His smile disappeared. "You've already lost the company." I slid the leather folder onto the table. "No." "You abandoned the house." "No." "You transferred company money." "No." Each answer was calm, measured, like placing bricks one at a time. Daniel leaned back. "What exactly do you think you're proving?" I opened the folder. "The truth." I handed the first document to his father, the second to my aunt, the third to Emily. Each packet contained the same evidence: the forged signatures, the banking timeline, the 7 unauthorized transfers totaling $486,214.83, the family continuity agreement, and 1 letter from my father. Nobody spoke. Paper rustled. Someone quietly inhaled. Daniel stared at the documents, then at me. "What is this?" "Documentation." His confidence cracked. "This isn't legally binding." Helen stepped into the dining room, right on time. She had been waiting outside. Daniel looked stunned. "Who are you?" "Helen Brooks." She placed her business card on the table. "Attorney for Mitchell Residential Construction." "I've never heard of you." "I know. That was intentional." Daniel stood up. "This is ridiculous." Helen remained calm. "The ownership transfer you attempted activated the builder's clause." "That's fake. It was filed on April 18, 2018. She placed the certified filing receipt beside his plate. "The Secretary of State has the original." His face lost its color. For the first time since this nightmare began, he looked afraid. Real fear. Not anger. Not frustration. Fear. He turned toward Emily. Say something. She didn't. Instead, she quietly asked him a question. You told me the company was already yours. Silence. You said Sarah signed everything. More silence. You said none of this could be traced. The room froze. Daniel looked at her, as if willing her to stop talking. She lowered her eyes. I believed you. Then she started crying. Real tears. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just quiet regret. I'm sorry, Sarah. I looked at my little sister. I know. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was honest. Daniel changed tactics. First came anger. This is all her fault. Then manipulation. I only did it because our marriage was falling apart. Then self-pity. I was trying to protect Lily. Finally. Fake tears. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. Helen simply slid another page across the table. Printed text messages. Bank records. Meeting schedules. Hotel receipts. Everything connected. Everything dated. Everything undeniable. Then someone unexpected spoke. Daniel's father. He slowly removed his reading glasses, looked at his son, and quietly said, I didn't raise you to steal from your own family. Nobody interrupted him. When your mother and I started our hardware store, we had $900. He looked at Daniel again. We never took what wasn't ours. His voice remained steady. You don't need a lawyer right now. You need a mirror. Daniel couldn't answer. At that moment, Lily stood up. She walked around the table, past her father, past Emily, straight toward me. She wrapped both arms around my waist. I knew you wouldn't lie. That was it. No long speech. Just 7 words. They meant more than every legal document in the room. The weeks that followed were surprisingly quiet. Fraud investigations rarely happen overnight, but facts move steadily, just like foundations settling into place. Within 34 days, the court issued temporary orders restoring my operational control of Mitchell Residential Construction. Within 61 days, the frozen company accounts were returned. The unauthorized transfers were traced. Most of the money, $451,900, was recovered. Some of it had already been spent. That portion was never returned. The house was ordered to be sold. After debts and legal costs, I received my rightful share. I didn't ask to keep it. Too many memories had been broken inside those walls. Emily moved into a small apartment across town. Months later, she sent me a handwritten letter, not asking for money, not asking for forgiveness, just accepting responsibility. I kept the letter, not because it erased the past, because it acknowledged it. Daniel eventually accepted a plea agreement related to the financial fraud. I didn't attend the hearing. Justice doesn't always need an audience. 6 months later, I reopened my father's old office at the construction company. The first thing I placed on my desk wasn't an award or a photograph. It was the hammer he had given me when I was 10 years old. The handle was worn smooth from years of use. I picked it up. It felt exactly the same. Strong, balanced, reliable, just like the lessons he left behind. Lily visited every Saturday. Sometimes we worked in the garden. Sometimes we ate burgers at the same little diner where Dad and I had spent so many Friday afternoons. One afternoon, she looked at the maple tree and smiled. You were right. About what? Trees remember. I looked at the branches reaching toward the sky. So do people. The difference is, trees keep growing anyway. I spent years believing trust meant giving people every key to my life. I understand something different now. Trust is earned in small moments and protected by quiet wisdom. My father never prepared me to seek revenge. He prepared me to survive betrayal without becoming bitter. That was the greatest inheritance he ever left me. Not the company, not the money, the blueprint for rebuilding. If this story reminded you to know your worth, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, drop a comment, and I will see you in the next one.